Welcome back to Fear and Loathing in the Windy City. Thanks for joining us for another episode. We might only have like two left. This show, we talk about local politics in Chicago and how they pertain to the national election, chances of Bernie Sanders becoming president. Yesterday was Super Tuesday. It was a big day in the election. Illinois' election's only 2 weeks away, and we were hoping for more clarity coming out of Super Tuesday, and it looks like we got at least who it's becoming a two-person race at the very least.
Yeah, and Super Tuesday, what happened yesterday, look, a lot of people are saying that all of a sudden Biden is this resurgent person. And my question to a lot of people is, okay, he won those 9 states, but majority of those states are in the South, and those are southern states that usually turn red. And the Electoral College, I hate being the bad guy here, the Electoral College supersedes popular vote because we have an antiquated system, and those states that Biden won, again, always go red. So at the end of the day, when it comes down to key states, Bernie Sanders won Colorado, which was once a formerly a red state that's now blue. He won strategically in California. He won Utah. He won his home state of Vermont, and he won another state as well. So at the end of the day, this whole idea that Biden is back is a ridiculous story to propel. However, Bernie Sanders was denied perhaps more votes due to another candidate still being in the race. And I have to say this: we have to when you are running a strong campaign, you have to have a strong political infrastructure. And Bernie Sanders, and to some extent, and I'm very critical of Biden, they have that. The other candidates that are still in the race do not.
Yeah, I mean, if we were playing the election straight up, if this was if our system was actually treating all candidates in good faith, it does seem like intuitively that it's Bernie and Biden, and the delegate count, and Elizabeth Warren's presence in the race is kind of maybe problematic to Bernie. However, and we agreed, to play devil's advocate a little bit. It does seem like the establishment lining up against Bernie is bearing fruit for them, right?
For the moment.
For the moment. And we could see a mess like we saw in 1968 where people be protesting outside of the DNC. People be, probably dressed in yellow vests, in an international sign of solidarity like we're seeing in France right now. But we saw that in 1968, and the Democratic Party was able to withstand that and survive it, as a party decades later. What would you say to people, like in Elizabeth Warren's camp that see these dynamics and still think that they could do a better job of winning over the delegates that went to Biden in Virginia, let's say?
Okay. You're being very kind. I got to be the bad cop here.
Yeah.
And I don't look, I understand people are loyal to a candidate. I understand people are loyal to what that candidate represents. But let's take, for example, Klobuchar and Buttigieg supporters. And even Warren supporters, Gabbard supporters, Bernie Sanders supporters. I think we can all agree, no matter how you feel about any other candidates, I think we all can agree that Biden in the previous debates, he was an epic disaster. They all can agree. Yet Buttigieg and Klobuchar went to Biden and dropped their supporters like it was nothing.
Yeah.
But now if we're looking at Warren, though, she's still in the race, but throughout the entire primaries, she didn't win second place. Very rarely was she even third place candidate. In Massachusetts, for example, which is her state, she's the U.S. senator in that state, she came in third place. She couldn't even win her own territory. So this is a problem. If she's unable to really command a clear lead as it stands right now, the best thing that she could do for her supporters, for her own message, would be to rally around Bernie Sanders. But again, if she's still in there, what role do you want to play? I don't really see your end game, especially looking at not only Super Tuesday, but the last 4 primary states. How is it that during even those 4 primary states, the writing wasn't on the wall? She didn't really do what she was initially saying throughout 2019, especially and even throughout all the debates. If you have 61 delegates right now, which is what she has, but compare that to Biden's 566, Bernie Sanders' 501 delegates, an argument can be made that those 61 delegates on all those votes that Warren got on Super Tuesday could have gone to Bernie Sanders.
And okay, if they had gone to Bernie Sanders, and he would most definitely be in the lead,
or at
um,
least tied up with
or
Biden.
tied
And
up.
again, the votes, the delegate counts are still being 1/3 have been declared in California.
Yeah. Now, let's say you're Elizabeth Warren, and you're not, at the forefront of the movement, which is where maybe she would like to be. But she's also not within the confines of the establishment the way that many people in the movement paint her as. At least not as far as people in the establishment rallying around her versus Biden. So you're her in this position, and what you really care about is having these policies become the norm in society. The establishment rallying around Biden, doesn't he become the better vehicle to actually pass these policies? Bear in mind, I in full sympathy and consideration that the public will not withstand this. The Democratic Party will likely see a lot of detriment to their existence, and it'll be terrible for the country. But the deal making within this game, and bear in mind that Donald Trump became president through the Electoral College because he won the game, not necessarily
Popular vote is
That's
irrelevant here in the
right.
States. I mean, that's
So,
a sad fact.
isn't that kind of going through her head and her people's heads tonight about, if their legacy is making these policies come into existence, you know,
Okay, I see your point, but
I guess,
my question is this: is that Warren has surrounded herself with a lot of former Clinton aides, Obama aides, Kamala Harris aides, and a lot of those individuals have problems with Bernie Sanders.
Right.
And when push came to shove with Warren, she was always late in the game. Take, for example, the Dakota Access Pipeline. She didn't only come on board until Obama gave the green light saying, all right, stop construction. Warren has a lot of issues following her, and even going after Bernie Sanders supporters and even saying that they're mean or they're sexist, calling them Bernie bros, straight white men, right? If you look at Bernie Sanders' campaign leadership and a lot of his main organizers and the people that are getting things done, 70% of Bernie Sanders' campaign leadership and main organizers are run by women. Women of different backgrounds, women of color, women of different age groups, and they're the ones leading, not straight white men. Straight white men are not leading Bernie Sanders' campaign.
Well,
it's a vast coalition. And the thing is, Warren, I think if she really cares about her legacy or the idea of progressive issues, getting things done, Bernie Sanders is it. But going to Biden would be a nail in the coffin, not only to the legacy, but then she would also be siding up or allying herself then with Bloomberg, who recently quit and has decided to endorse Joe Biden.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something that Warren herself is going to have to deal with because not once but twice during the two debates, Warren, was eviscerating Bloomberg. It'd be really odd now to see her on the same stage with Bloomberg saying, Biden's our guy. They agree on something.
her other option is not endorsing at all. I mean, if the leadership in Bernie's campaign is definitely not straight white men, but the cacophony of voices on social media tends to skew that direction.
Yeah.
Is the argument. And I'm with you. I mean, like, I want her to endorse Bernie Sanders. I would like them to, rally together before Illinois. This is something that I think the Bernie Sanders, people want, but how do we deserve it? I guess it's kind of the posturing that we get from the other side.
I would say,
And what does it look like moving forward if we are to make this happen?
in elections, no one deserves anything. Politics 101 is earning the vote. All right, that's what you got to do, no matter what office you're running for. And looking at Bernie, his campaign did the job. They have a strong political infrastructure. And after not only South Carolina, but Super Tuesday, you have a lot of diehard Warren supporters that have yet to vote, even on social media, saying, look, there's really no path to victory. I'm going to support Bernie. You got people leaving Warren. I mean, at this point, Warren's word of, hey, I'm going to support Bernie has its weight in gold. But Warren has to make this decision. But the more she waits, again, I have to call into question, well, what are you waiting for? Because Biden is not a progressive champion. And Biden versus Trump will be an epic disaster. Because
I agree.
Trump will eviscerate Biden. Unless people are so angry at Trump that the orange man is so bad.
I mean,
they'll turn out
honestly,
to vote, but that is not the case. And if Democrats are going to be running on that, be prepared for another Trump-like person to come around.
it speaks to the tone deafness of the establishment that's rallying behind Biden and Bloomberg's Bloomberg drop.
Republican,
I really should
yeah.
be enjoying Bloomberg dropping out more than I am. But I just can't at the moment. But right now I am. But him dropping out, endorsing Biden, putting all his money there. Biden, who Trump has kind of labeled as, as a figure of like the Democrats that are out to get him, the do nothing Democrats. This phony WrestleMania narrative that Trump, kind of encloses himself and as a populist, as that he's really there for you. What has a lot of racist undertones. But it seems like the Democrats are really leaning into giving that some kind of legitimacy, and that's the concern with Biden. Warren rallying behind Sanders is a way for pieces of the establishment, insiders that have made politics a career, to get on board with the movement. But how does that cheapen the movement? Is that us leaning into party politics?
My personal gut. Okay,
And if that's the only way to do this,
ideally here,
should we not be doing that?
I'll give you what I've been thinking. And an ideal point of view, I would love for Warren to endorse Bernie Sanders. But my gut is saying that she will go with Biden because when push came to shove, the Democrats are very blind in regards to seeing what's happening outside. They're not aware that, look, 500,000 Americans go bankrupt every year. We have student debt. We have climate change. We have a crumbling infrastructure. But the Democratic establishment, not only at the federal level, but at the state level, take the same donations from major corporations, big banks, and lobby groups. So they're all one the same, and they're all friends with each other. They're all good friends with each other. And yeah, you could see them go back and forth. And Warren herself and her supporters are going to have to make that decision of, okay, do we really care about these policies, or are we only going to get half measures? Because half measures doesn't accomplish anything, ever. You need, if we really want to bring in change, we really want to get people actively in vote, now's the time to embrace progressive policies. But Warren, I don't know if she truly believes these issues because she now has a super PAC when early on she was against dark money and corporations, but now she has a super PAC. That super PAC spent $4 million in Texas just for Warren alone, and she still ended up in fourth place.
And with Julian Castro's endorsement, which is kind of a blow, but at the same time is part of the strategy to win elections, right? I mean, I think we're seeing her adapt as a candidate, and what she's hoping to materialize isn't materializing. And it does, counter her, her narrative about where her principles lies, but her policies are robustly progressive. They are laid out. The wealth tax is not as, none of them are as aggressive as Bernie Sanders and where we want them to be. And I think that that's where a lot of the half measures, and especially where the pushback for these things not to happen are at. But her framework of like pushing for these policies has been consistent. My only issue is that they've been consistent from within the comforts of the establishment. A player in the game, I suppose.
I got to be the bad guy here, and I'm sorry. It's just when we look at working within, you only can work within so much before you yourself kind of get corrupted or you decide to compromise your ideals. And during the second last debate, when all the candidates were asked, hey, should you support the candidate with the majority of delegates? Only Bernie Sanders said that the candidate with the most delegates should get the nomination.
Right.
Warren sided, even with Bloomberg, that the super delegates should weigh in.
Right.
And that is an issue, especially for election integrity, because I hate saying this, and I really hate saying this, the Republican Party does not have super delegates. So that means, hang on. This is the nightmare scenario. The Republicans have a much more Democratic primary than the Democrats do.
Well, yeah, they're very disciplined about, what they're about and what they want. They're very single-minded about what the country should look like. Whereas the Democrats have a lot of different camps that are always interfighting. Yeah. And I do think that, Warren has been trying to win this game. It's been really compromising a lot of her issues, a lot of, the principal stances of how you go about, winning this game should look like. I've worked elections. It seems like you do whatever you need to do to win, and that really leads into a lot of the toxicity of our politics. Yeah. To be sure, Bernie Sanders, this is not his first presidential run. There's, he gets to run a certain way from what we've learned from the first time around. Um, Having said all that, I do feel like her, saying weighing in about the delegate posturing was still listening to advice from within the establishment.
Yeah.
Advice about how, this could look like if she were to follow a different lead than, where Bernie Sanders is trying to take a plurality of the country. And there must be something to it, if she's listening. However, I'm sure that there was some conversations about her being a vice president at some point and that not working out.
If she stays in longer, I have to ask, like, what is your game goal? Because if she's still losing, not only that, even if her goal is to be vice president, if she's still losing even in future primary states, what bargaining chip would it mean to have her as VP? I mean,
Yeah. Well, I don't think she's vying for VP ship.
If she's able not to command a big coalition of supporters and voters,
Yeah.
I think she makes herself irrelevant. And at this point, she does have to wrap the campaign. The idea of who she's going to endorse, though,
I
comes
mean,
into
I think
question.
she's more than relevant right now, especially Amy Klobuchar, siding with Biden immediately.
Yeah.
The New York Times endorsing both Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar, but them having very different politics. Warren, I think, has been extremely gaslit by everyone, by the movement, by the establishment, by the media. The media loves her; they hate her. By people that purport to love these policies, people that would never want these policies, saying they want to give her money to make these policies happen. So I don't think that she's at a loss for advice, but maybe at a loss for good advice about where this moment of time, what her role could be. Because it could have been a lot of things, in reflection to our movement work, we always think about missed opportunities. And I think, that's really what her camp is kind of maybe hoping, the Bernie Sanders people, we kind of ease up about. In her position, what role, could you fairly ask of her? And her fulfilling some kind of role, what does that look like for the movement looking forward? Because her politics is not the same as the movement's.
Yeah.
And that does begin to change things. And then, Bernie Sanders accepting an endorsement from her is also acquiescing a certain kind of compromise to a different way of doing things. And is the movement going to be able to adapt?
I think if Warren were to somehow be involved in Bernie Sanders' campaign, it would be a problem for a lot of progressives, and especially how she has treated the Bernie Sanders campaign early on. I think also her, she can endorse, but I don't want to tell the Bernie Sanders campaign what to do. Is just I wouldn't have her on board any kind of key administrative role. An endorsement's one thing, but being part of the administration is something entirely different because she will bring in that kind of central pragmatic point of view from the DNC establishment that doesn't mode well with revolutionary politics.
And I don't disagree that that's what she brings in, and that it doesn't bode well with the revolutionary people on the forefront of the Bernie Sanders movement to make those policies happen.
Yeah.
Do we need somebody like that, though?
Warren in the campaign? I don't know. I really don't think so. I think that's going to be a problem for Bernie.
Before we bring on our guest, I wanted to quickly talk about someone that's also made these kinds of compromises.
That is true. Who's also
to get
endorsed Bernie
right.
Sanders.
We've talked about this figure a lot. Jesus Garcia is a congressman in Chicago's Chicago's 4th Congressional District. He's endorsed Bernie Sanders. He was known for being an independent political figure within Chicago politics, meaning that he stood outside of the machinations of Michael Madigan, Ed Burke, the Democratic Party at large, and he was a founding member of the 22nd Ward IPO coming out of Little Village. Jesus Garcia was an alderman, became state senator, lost his seat, turned community activist, then became Cook County commissioner, and then ran for mayor against Ron Emanuel, which put him on the map, and then was gifted a seat to Congress by the machine.
Yeah.
And there we see the building of this machine. Several elected officials that owe a lot of their political careers to the works of Chuy Garcia and his elevating them to where they're at, also taking them under their wings and mentoring them. You know, there's a lot to be said about, and there's a lot to criticize.
Yeah.
About machine building politics, about how it's single-minded about its self-preservation over really anything that it's purported to be about. However, we look at a figure like Jesus Garcia, who's been in the arena for a very, very long time, openly making the kinds of compromises that we're discussing that might be an issue for the movement. He, of course, stumps on the fact that there's kids in cages, there's issues at the border, and he's trying to get vying for power to do something about that. Of course, politicians always talk a good game, but
Yeah.
there is something that could be said about all that having a lot of legitimacy. Looking at Bernie Sanders and the position he's at now, he's was always outside of the political establishment, always kind of considered a joke.
Yeah.
Not taken seriously, sidelined 4 years ago, overtly in front of the world stage, his presidential run, a second time being maligned again. And he is still within striking distance of the presidency.
Yeah.
And he's grateful and openly taking an endorsement from someone like Jesus Garcia.
Well, okay, Bernie and Chuy Garcia do have a history, and I see your point with bringing this up, because Warren has her own issues too. But I think in regards to looking at what Chuy is doing, and I'm looking at those 2 points of view. One, he's getting people that are different than the traditional Illinois Democratic machine in office. And two, if you try and build your own machine, do you build your own form of corruption too at the same time? I think at this point right now, looking at Chuy Garcia, looking at the state of Illinois and Illinois politics, the only way there will be real change is if people get up and hold these people accountable, these politicians that are running for office. You've got to hold them accountable. Because if you're not there to remind them that they're public servants, well, then they will run amok, and then we'll replace one machine with another machine altogether.
I'd like to, kind of pivot a little bit to the local politics of it all.
Okay.
Chuy Garcia is kind of building a progressive machine, and it's kind of taking over the skeletal, infrastructure of what was the Hispanic Democratic, organization, which vied for power for Latinos in the city that historically had ignored Latino issues, had ignored the needs of a growing Hispanic population, especially one that was growing in rapid numbers due to the amount of dirty jobs, industrial jobs that were not being filled
Absolutely.
by would-be union members of the city. Instead, and then their kids coming into the schools, a lot of Latino people that came to work these factories. Of course, their kids would go to Chicago public schools, and they couldn't speak English, so their schools would say they're stupid, and they would flunk them. This is the 60s, this is the 70s.
Yeah.
So the HDO kind of came out of efforts for representation from there, essentially building up into a political machine. It just seems like there's kind of a waxing and waning of these, of these situations. And I wanted to thank my guests for coming on today, Javier. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself and what you're here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me today. My name is Javier Cervantes. I live in Pilsen, but I'm also a longtime organizer with labor. I spent over a decade working at SEIU Healthcare, representing home care workers, nursing home workers, but also been very interested in politics. Right. One of the main things I always wanted to do was to help working class people. I did it in the local, but I wanted to figure out how can I do it on a bigger scale. So that's why I began to get involved here and there and in races outside of the union. Because when you work at a local, you do get involved in politics, but not to where as in depth as I was able to do afterwards. So basically, that's what I've been doing the last few years. But yeah, any way that I was able to help working class people, that's always wanted to do my whole career.
All right.
Thank you so much for being on. And I know you've worked a couple of elections. You've been very active in Chicago politics. Before we kind of jump into a race that I know that you can tell us a lot about. I don't know if you wanted to weigh in on our conversation about Super Tuesday. I know that you had been considering Elizabeth Warren.
Yes.
And you were a big fan of Julian Castro when he was running. A lot of his issues definitely resonated.
Yes.
People in Pilsen.
Yeah, so I was a big fan. Well, I am a big fan. I am a big fan of Elizabeth Warren. I but also Bernie Sanders. Back in 2016, our local endorsed Hillary Clinton. But I still believed in Bernie, right? I still voted for Bernie, did my thing on my own. But Elizabeth Warren, I felt I gravitated to her platform. I felt like, I understand what people were said about the money she's taking, this and that, whatever the case would be. But I looked at the platform and I liked her platform. I also enjoy the fact that she was endorsed by Julian Castro, right? I'm a big fan of Julian Castro. I feel like we need representation at the highest seats in the land, and that's why I was really pushing for Elizabeth. Unfortunately, we've seen what happened, right? Well, for me, I feel like fortunately we've seen what happened on Super Tuesday. But now I think it's time that a progressive side begins to build their power, right? And someone like Elizabeth Warren, I feel like to hopefully teaming up with Bernie Sanders, in my opinion, would fight that juggernaut that's coming at them. They organized, they mobilized, and obviously we're seeing what's happening, right? It's an anti-Bernie, anti-progressive movement fight right now, and I think right now it's time to get juggernaut versus juggernaut, right? Because that's what it is, right? We have to win. That's how I see it. Because if we don't win, and we're on the outside looking in, we can't make that change that we want, right? And I understand what you guys were saying earlier. I agree with you, right? But sometimes we have to get to the table. We have to win, right? And if we don't put some of those thoughts to the side and just say we got to get across the finish line, I'm worried about what may happen, right? I don't want Biden to win, right? Bloomberg just came in and went with him, and everybody's going with him, and you got Bloomberg money now, right? And
a
Jesus.
Republican in a Democratic primary. Yeah.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
It's like, Jesus Christ,
You
right?
want a Republican VP? Might be Bloomberg.
Yeah.
So that's why I was listening to you guys. I'm just worried what's going to happen, and I just feel like right now we're in a position where let's get together, let's organize like we do like in the labor movement, right? You got to organize and mobilize, right? And I think that's the time right now where we try to set our differences aside, get together, and let's beat that juggernaut.
Yeah. You mentioned representation being extremely important. And Julian Castro's running. Only Latino that I know that's run for president has gotten as far as he has. I'm sure that women are looking at Elizabeth Warren's campaign, and feeling maybe a lot of the same things. You've talked to me a lot about representation. What is it about her, though, that, it's not Amy Klobuchar? Because Elizabeth Warren is in a very unique position that Amy is not.
Yeah. I just I wasn't. I mean, Amy had good positions, but I just felt like Elizabeth had more of a progressive platform, and from Amy, Amy, she talked a good, she had good things to say, right? She played a good game, right? I mean, she's a good politician, right? She's been there for a while, right? So she's gonna know what to say. I appreciated, for example, the how Elizabeth Warren created the agency to protect consumers, as a private citizen. I mean, that to me was a big deal, right? Like, what are you going to do with your power? I understand she was a Republican, but to me it also says a lot when, okay, fine, she was initially Republican, right? But then whatever happened, she was able to change her mind and saw the big picture, understood, and started changing her policy. So she grew, and she became who she is now. So that to me is like, if you're willing to go against your initial platform, what you initially grew up with, and you're able to change that for the better good, that tells me a lot about you. That means that that your blinders came down, and you were able to expand and to care about working class people. And that to me, at the end of the day, is really important to me. But that for me was the difference, and that's why, again, I keep hoping and that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders could get together with Castro. I mean, I think that's a great team. Castro, Warren,
Squad.
the squad, right? It's juggernaut versus juggernaut. Is the point I see it.
And that definitely would be a lot of pieces coming together. Someone once told me that politics is a game of addition. You have to add.
Yes, I heard that one.
Yeah. Having said that, it seems like I kind of wanted to bring it back a little bit to local. In Pilsen, there's a race right now where longstanding Senator Tony Munoz, who you support,
Yes.
has a challenger. They're in a wave where we see a lot of progressive challengers taking on the establishment, but we're also seeing now on the ground that the senator is, formidably holding his own. And I don't know if you wanted to speak to that.
Yeah, the senator throughout his career. I mean, I used to with the local when I was at SJU. I followed a lot. A lot of them were my home care workers, childcare providers, working class people making $9.50 an hour, $10 an hour. Even before the fight for 15 got folks a little higher. Personal assistants that used to make $1 and now make a living wage. Right. I wanted to, before I really knew him. I wanted to see how you voted. What did you do, right? And he always stood up for these folks, right? So, I cared a lot that he represented our undocumented people very well, right? To me, our undocumented community is extremely important. My mother was undocumented, bless you, and a lot of us have family that was undocumented and the struggles, right? So when you pass things like in-state tuition for undocumented folks, back before anybody was even thinking about it, right? When you give folks a chance to have a driver's license who don't have documents, who are scared to drive, right? And because they're gonna get pulled over, if they get pulled over, they're gonna get deported, right? Because you just broke the law, right? So, and so forth. A lot of the bills that he passed, in my opinion, were progressive bills, right? It's just he just didn't necessarily advertise them that way, right? So, and he's been very consistent with what he's been doing from the beginning. One of his biggest bills with all kids, right? He expanded all health insurance for all children in Illinois. That's huge, right? I have a 13-year-old daughter, right? She has all kids, right? Because it's just it's hard to get health insurance nowadays. It's really difficult, and so that's been his platform from the beginning, and he's just continued to do it and that's why, to me, I look at how you voted and what are the bills that you're trying to pass. That's my checklist, right? And that to me was important to me.
For sure.
If there's something I could,
I was gonna tee you up for that. Just that because I do think that we saw in the 2019 race there was a lot of aldermen that got ousted because a lot of their constituents saw that historically, even though they've been there for a while, they weren't doing as much, or they had let them down in a vision of where they wanted. The senator does not seem to have as much of that problem because he can point to things like what you're saying. But there's also been a lot of compromises that has happened. People look for jobs, and then they offset, for the impact, especially on the environment. I know that, Kit, you live in the 12th Ward.
a little bit, yeah. So here's one of the issues I want to bring up, especially since you've worked with the Senator Tony Manzo. I think it's really important that we really talk about environmental pollution in the city of Chicago. This is a major metropolitan city, and you talk about healthcare too.
Yes.
And there's lead in Chicago's drinking water. There's a lot of industrial facilities, not only in the 12th Ward, but in Pilsen.
Yes.
It's affecting people's breathing, and eventually something will impact somebody's health, and then they go to the hospital and they're stuck paying a ridiculous hospital bill. But these things can be avoided. But sadly, in Chicago, especially on the south side, the people are being ignored. And in McKinley Park, a large green space, 63 acres of public space for the people, there's an asphalt plant, a mad asphalt plant that was built there overnight. No one told anyone, not at the Cook County level, not the city level, not the state level, dare I say it, not even at the federal level. No one told anyone in that community
Yeah.
that asphalt plant was being built. And this thing is releasing all particulate matter. There's a lot of heavy truck traffic there. And my question is, what is the senator's plan to really address this facility that has a really shady background and is there impacting the people's health, the park's health? I mean, it's going to leave a long-lasting scar. What is going to be done to really bring justice there? Because the people there want it gone. Not tomorrow, not the next day, but right now. They want it gone.
Well, I could tell you that of course, Senator doesn't live far from McKinley Park. He lives, Jesus, like maybe like half a mile from the park, right?
Right.
He definitely understands what it's doing to the people there, to his constituents, to the community, to mothers that are, that are pregnant, that are smelling this air, and unfortunately, some remember children may come up with defects and so forth.
I mean, there's a school right there, right?
Yeah,
by
an
it.
LEI, right? And I've spoken to some of the students there, and they've told me during the summer they feel like puking when they have to smell all them fumes going into the classroom, right? So what is that's a great question. What is he going to do? What is he trying to? What has he been trying to do actually for the last, I'll say, about a year and a half or so?
Right.
I believe March 23rd, there's going to be the IPA will be in the ward to get public comment on whether they should initiate a 10-year permit, because now they want to be there for 10 years, right? It's insane, right? Definitely, the senator has stated, and he will do it in public, that he is going to be doing public comments on the record that he does not want that asphalt there at all. He's going to do it. He's stated, and he's said it many times, and he's going to do that on the record in front of the IEPA. He's talking to Director Kim to figure out a way to move that thing out of there, right? We have to get it out, right? He definitely wants to do everything he possibly can in his power, and he wants to help and input from the community to, as well, right? That's why he keeps having these town halls. I believe he's had, 4 town halls, right?
Okay.
So he definitely wants the input from the community. He definitely wants that out, right? And he just wants to continue to have the support from the community to get that thing out of there. So it doesn't help anybody, right? We need to get it out there. And hopefully, he became a chief sponsor of the Clean Energy Jobs Act, right, in Illinois. So, in a perfect world, right, let's remove all of that, right? It'd be great if we had some panel farms, and windmill farms and clean energy. Those jobs actually are high-paying jobs, right? They're high-technology jobs, right? Why can't we have that there? Why can't we transform the Southwest Corridor into clean energy jobs, right? So he's for that 100%. And he doesn't just say it. You look at his record, and his record speaks for itself. He's always voted environmental friendly 100% of the time, and he'll continue to do that. And hopefully we'll continue to get the support from the community to get that thing out of there. It needs to go out.
Well, I hope so. It did, and it is concerning though that it was able to be built up under his watch, but it does seem like at the impact that's being people are raising awareness of its impact. That's definitely mobilized people to action, and Senator has definitely been on the ball about that. He has been in office for a few terms now. And he did come from kind of the enclave of the Hispanic Democratic Organization. I have some criticisms of that, but I know that you've worked with a lot of people that came out of that organization. I don't know if you can attest to some of the bills and work that they've done, but
yeah. I've worked on some of those campaigns, right? And later on, like in my career, I want to say like 2018, because before that, I was just fully in tune with what I did at the local. I wanted to get experience, right? The best way to get experience is actually get on the floor and actually be part of it, right? Just to, on a part-time basis. So yeah, I worked with some folks, and just to try to get the word out. But the way I look at it is, we did not have this representation prior to that. We didn't have Latino representation the way we had it afterwards. I'm big on that, right? I want to see someone that looks like me, not necessarily just like me, but that's Latino, that's Mexicano, Puerto Rican, whatever the case may be, having the best interest of me and my family, right, in my community. And I felt that that's what the Hispanic or Democratic Organization did. It brought a lot of those folks in. Some folks didn't work out, right? Some folks obviously did not work out, right? We know, Danny Solis, he's done, right? He was a rata, right?
well, we don't know how much he's talked. But
yeah. So, but just no. And when I call him that,
liar.
yeah, I mean it more like what he did to our community, right? I'm never gonna forget, because I've always lived in Pilsen. I've lived on actually on Oakley my whole life.
Right.
I remember when the neighborhood vandalized broke all his windows in his office. Yeah. They did it not because they were mad at what he was not doing to the community, right?
What year was that?
Oh God, I was in college. I want to say 2002, 2003. It
2000
was early
okay.
2000s.
And let's not forget also what happened with Casa Asun too under his watch. I mean, that place now became what a $2,000 apartment
Condos?
condo. I mean,
And
that's a sad end to something
murals
that
after
yeah,
protests
yeah.
after protests. But I just wanted to like timestamp that because people are like,
I'm sorry,
"Oh,
maybe you know better than me, but I remember when it was.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't remember the year, but I remember, I remember vividly. So
Yeah.
I used to, so before all this labor thing that I got into, I went to design school. I went to the International Academy of Design and Technology. So I used to walk down Oakley, and I just looked, and it was right there on 25th and Oakley. I was like, oh my God, what happened? You know, and the people right away is like, we're tired of them. They didn't hide from the fact that they did this. They were
early
just tired of
2000s.
it.
That was a big push for gentrification in Pilsen, and there was waves of that. And just people used to say, we gave Danny Solis too hard of a time. A lot of people did way before.
No,
got on
the
scene.
community wanted them out way before,
Yeah,
brother.
for a long, long time. But you mentioned representation, and we talked earlier when we talked about this interview. The national race and what's that going to look like for Obama. Bernie Sanders just released his first commercial featuring Obama.
Yeah.
I guess to counter all the ones that are already out there. I thought that he had already endorsed Michael Bloomberg because that's how much attention I guess I pay to things. But it does seem like a lot of politics becomes representation about maintaining a narrative, a story, and how much is this election going to be about redeeming Obama's legacy? Is something that we kind of touched on.
Yeah, I think I messaged you about that, right? I was like, hey, bro, what's going on with this commercial, And I was just like, the way I'm looking at this now is like, they're trying to do everything they can to win, right? I don't think we need to go back to the Obama pool, right? I think that Bernie has gotten this far on his platform. Just keep doing what you're doing, brother. That's what I would tell Bernie, right? And if I have a little bit of a critique per se for what Bernie is doing is, I understand we need a revolution. I get it. I don't disagree with it. I'm a man that used to take out nursing homes to go on strike, so I get it. I know. We need people power to move, right? But let's move a little bit from repeating that over and over again. And I want you to plug into my heartstrings, and tell me exactly what you're going to do about affordable housing while you're on stage. I want to hear what you're going to do about every single struggle that I'm going through every single day with my family, with my daughter, And I think you'll start grabbing more people, And I don't think he needs to go back. I don't think, and then again, in Obama, people are going to say their things about him. I was one of the ones that went to Indiana back in '08 to flip it blue. I remember driving my 15-passenger van all over Gary, Indiana, and Hammond, organizing from 10 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. I was tired. I was young, though, but I was enthusiastic about change, about what he was telling us, right? But then I was a little disappointed what happened. Then you deport 3 million of our people. What's going on here, brother? You know what I'm saying? So, so all I gotta say is, if I could tell Bernie something, it would be like, bro, just stick to what you've done. Stick to your guns. You're doing it. You're moving people. Bring in some reinforcements. We all need them. It's okay, right? Bring them in. Again, juggernaut versus juggernaut is rocket. You don't need to go back to the old school. It's people are gonna start thinking differently about you a little bit. Because you have your platform, you have your mission, you have what you're doing. Just stick to it, right? That's kind of the way I feel about it. President Obama is gonna be in the Biden camp. Soon enough. I'm pretty sure he's gonna start, hitting the campaign trail with him, and then what? Right? Then people are going to be like, but you just came out of this commercial. You know what I'm saying? It's
right. Well, I mean, and is the Biden camp the best place for Obama's legacy to be at? It does seem like that's a carryover from his administration, but isn't Bernie what his administration inspired and left a whole generation wanting? and finally fighting to work it together for themselves.
Yeah.
It's something I would hope that he considers
Yeah.
in these dynamics. But I did want to close. I don't know if you had any closing questions before we give you the final word.
I would say, in regards towards at least the environmental issues, if the subscribers of this show want to learn more about it, especially what the senator is doing right now, where can people go online to find it?
Yeah, so I mean, we have I follow a lot Neighbors for Environmental Justice.com.
Okay.
I think it's N4 N4 is it? N4 I forgot the whole
N4,
website. Yeah. So they have a lot of great information on there. You
Neighbors
could
for
also
environmentaljustice.org.
yeah, you could also
Okay.
visit the senator's website, MunozForStateSenate.com, where he talks more about the environment. But just stay tuned to. I mean, the senator's social media page will continue to let people know about what's gonna, the events that's going on, and let people know to come on March 23rd. That's gonna be a big day for to tell the IEPA that we do not want that thing here. And God willing, the senator is reelected again, and gets the support from the community, and he'll be there as your assistant Senate Majority Leader that's gonna tell the IPA, we don't want you here. I mean, IPA, I'm sorry. We're going to tell the IPA, we don't want Mad Asphalt Plant here anymore. Get out. Our communities first. And that's the bottom line. So
a good note to
that's
have it.
That's what I'm hoping that happens. So
All right.
All right. Thank you. Javier, thank you so much for being on the show.
thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Best of luck March
Thank you.
17th on the election.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Fear and Loathing in the Windy City. We have 2 weeks until the election here in Illinois. We'll see if this show evolves. We'll see what happens with the election. But as always, thank you so much for tuning in and for your support.